Hi everyone. After all these wonderful, eloquent women, I have my notes. Forgive me. Okay, I'm here today to tell you what a game is. But I've got a hidden agenda. By the time I leave, I want to have one person, just one, anyone in this room, to want to and to go out and make a game. So before I begin, let's hold up and ask a few questions. When I say games, who here is thinking about magic and bullets? Okay. Who is thinking about violence, age restrictions? A couple of you as well. Who here is thinking of a multi-billion-dollar international industry? See all the economists in the room. High-tech development houses, small startups, expensive hardware. Okay. Who's thinking of children? Yay! Who's thinking of that myth of the pimply, overweight, maladjust living in the basement? Okay. I'm here to tell you that that's not all there is to games. Games aren't even always digital. This talk is not about the latest PC game. It's not about the new consoles that have just been released. Even that mobile game you're playing in the back there. Games come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all around us. When your child is playing Ring-a-Rosy, she's playing a game, and all the values and dangers and pleasures of the game are with her. When you put your coin in a slot machine, when the kids are playing soccer in the parking lot, when your grandparents played bridge after dinner, when you are clicking through actions in Facebook, when you're playing solitaire on a conference call, when it rains this holiday and you roll the dice in Monopoly, when you sing into SingStar, if you take aim in Call of Duty, if you slay that dragon, you are playing a game. Some games have higher stakes and bigger followings, so we seem to think that they're more important. But when the national team lost the series to Pakistan, all they lost was a game. We play word games. We play emotional games. We game the system. Games and the concept of playing games permeate our daily lives, in our activities, in our speech, in our metaphor. And yet some relegate games to being for children, a waste of time. We devalue these strange activities and objects based solely on what? That they give us pleasure, and that pleasure is somehow the antithesis of labor, which is what grown-ups are supposed to be doing? No, because all the arts bring pleasure, and no one is going to say that going to the ballet is just for kids, although my husband still thinks it's a waste of time. Is it that games don't serve a purpose? Time spent in a game is, after all, time lost with no demonstrable gain. Well, there's not an awful lot to be gained by going to an art gallery either, except for the aesthetic experience of it. And the stakes of some games have an awful lot of material gain. So, is it then that we don't appreciate games as aesthetic experience? Ring-a-Rosy does not have a lot in common with Swan Lake, although I've once seen Swan Lake where it did. But they've put digital games into MoMA. I can show you a range of complex artistic works that either manifest as games or use games to impart their message. So that's not quite it either. Serious games can upset, educational games can teach, Professional games have material gain. Art games can beguile. But none of these games are quite what you were imagining when I first started talking, are they? Okay. The second you put a word in front of it, when you hedge the meaning, games can be presented as something else, something more than just a game. So I think the problem is far more insidious. I think it's all of these things. I think that the problem is that we feel guilty to play. Games aren't just for children. Children just play without guilt. So what is it to play? Play, the dictionary tells us, is to engage in an activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than a serious or practical purpose. The need to play is innate. It is most often associated with children in the free play that is held dear in our memories and idealized by adults, but it's in all of us. It has been theorized by many people over many years. Huizinga writes that play is a function of the living, but it is not susceptible of exact definition, either logically, biologically, or aesthetically. He says it is a free activity standing quite consciously outside of ordinary life. It occurs in all areas where, as game designers Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman say, something is testing the boundaries. The play of puppies testing their skills, the play of waves on the beach, the boundary between the water and the land, a play on words, what I'm doing now, testing the boundaries of language, playing the fool, the jester is allowed to call out the king, playing a game. Salen and Zimmerman state that play occurs in the spaces between the components of a system, like having play in the gears, and that play emerges from the relationships and interactions between these components in a system, like jiggling the gears. But either way, you need the gears. For them, play therefore exists because of more rigid structures, but also in opposition to them. Now, games are systematized play. Play which by its very nature strains against boundaries contained in the rules of the game, focused and given shape. Games take the power of play and channel it. Just how far can you jump? Just how good are you at understanding chess? Can you beat the boss, slay the dragon, shoot your opponent? When you are two and you're playing Ring of Rosies, it's as simple as trying to coordinate everybody turning in a circle and falling down at the same time, which is quite a challenge for a group of toddlers. So games take the jiggly testing nature of play and give it something to test itself against. Through this constant testing, the default state of games is learning. Sid Meier says that all games are puzzle-solving activities. As long as you are testing the boundaries, you're learning something. Something about the system, yourself. When boundaries are no longer challenging, the game is no longer fun. This is why very few adults still play Ring of Rosies. While play is free and chaotic, games are created. Games are crafted, designed to give the player something to jiggle, a boundary that remains a challenge to test. Ian Bogost argues that games simulate how things work by constructing models, systems, constraints that people can interact with. He's talking about digital games specifically, but it is as true for Murabaraba as it is for Grand Theft Auto. He writes about something he calls procedural rhetoric, where procedural refers to the processes that delineate the way in which things function, and rhetoric refers to an expression, means of communication that may be influential. Therefore, procedural rhetoric is the practice of using processes persuasively. Making games is constructing procedural rhetoric. building a system that can be influential, using processes persuasively. The game designer can use the game, the player's innate need to test boundaries, the immersion in the game to create meaning. Brenda Brathwaite is a game designer. When her daughter came home from school with a gross misunderstanding of what the American slave trade was about, she made a game. Her daughter was able to play with a game, test the system, and grasp the full horrors of the situation. There's an excellent TEDx talk by her about it. But you don't need to be teaching your children about the middle passage to make a game. You don't need to rush out and try and make your living making games. You don't need to be a technological genius to make a game. You don't need to have a university degree to make a game. But if you'd like one, come and speak to me afterwards. All you need to have is an idea of how to harness the power of play. And here's how you do it. You set up a goal. You set out rules to define the constraints, to make it more difficult for your players to reach the goal. Ring-a-Rosie, the goal is to sing the song and to do the actions at the same time. The rules are to hold hands, to all move in a circle, and to fall down at the right moment, not before and not after. That's really hard if you two. And it's trying and failing, and trying and failing, and finally getting it right that elicits that beautiful laughter. Games are powerful. Games are magical. If this holiday you are playing on the beach or driving in a car or sitting in the garden drinking a gin and tonic, which I'm desperately looking forward to, make a game. Make a game for your children, for your friends, for your colleagues. Make a game for yourself. It doesn't have to be a serious game. It doesn't have to be an educational game or an art game. Just a game. Build a system, no matter how simple, and watch others try to jiggle it. Allow yourself and others to experience the joy of play.